Nightmare Residue, Episode 2, Spoonman. Written, directed, and narrated by Patrick Logan. Voice modulation by 11 Labs.
The media calls him the Spoonman, a disgusting, despicable name for a disgusting, despicable killer. I'm not the first detective on the case. That honor goes to Angelina Forsyth. She took a leave of absence, sick leave, just 1 week into the hunt. I'm not even the second. That honor goes to Hank Miller. Hank chased the Spoonman across 3 states before deciding to pack up his things and hightailing it to Florida. Take up knitting or cribbage. Initially, some of his colleagues had thought that the Spoonman had caught him and not the other way around. But then the news reports came out telling a different story. The Florida media didn't initially connect the man who had hanged himself in his basement with dozens of spoons shining at his feet to the case. When they figured out who he was, what he'd been doing prior to relocating to Florida, the national news picked up Hank's story. That's why they brought me in. Because I can't be broken, can't be picked apart like the other detectives. I was the one who caught the baker, a deranged psychopath who diced up his victims and baked their offal into pies and sold them at his shop. I was the one who shot and killed Marty Jason June, an escaped mental patient who believed that by consuming the ears and lips of his 9 victims that he could hear and speak to the dead. So, it makes sense that they'd bring me in to stop the Spoonman. I don't generally have a proclivity for cannibals, but I kinda just fell into this role by accident. It must be my strong stomach, ha ha. Truth is, I don't even eat meat. Born and raised a vegan by hippie parents who thought that Y2K was going to spell the end of humanity. Reveled in the idea. When Y2K fizzled, they pivoted, became deeply interested in Nostradamus's predictions. Last I'd heard from them, they were holed up in some sort of prepper colony in Arizona. That was 7 years ago, around the time I discovered that the mild-mannered, smiling proprietor of Lovin' Cakes was secretly selling his patrons pies stuffed with the organ meat of his victims. The irony is that the baker didn't even like cakes. More a salty than sweet kind of guy. I'm thinking the Spoonman is more into fat than anything else. They found the first victim in an alley, stripped naked and crudely tied to a chair. Just a kid, really. 21 years old. I don't remember his name, but I make a point not to remember the names of these victims. It makes the nightmares less frightening. A nameless ghost haunting you is always less terrifying than the one that you know and recognize. The medical examiner said that a run-of-the-mill circular saw had been used to remove the top of the man's skull. Part of his parietal lobe, the section of your brain responsible for balance, amongst other things, was scooped out with a spoon. More gruesome than the scene itself was the ME's conclusion. The victim had still been alive when this took place. A week later, they discovered victim number 2. Another young man, naked, tied to a chair, top of his skull removed. Again in New York City, and Detective Angelina Forsyth, the detective then in charge, had called in the same ME to do the autopsy. This time, the Spoonman had removed most of the post-central gyrus. According to the ME, the victim would have experienced loss of temperature sensation, loss of touch, loss of pain. Probably good news for him. The brain itself might not have any nociceptors, the ability to sense pain, but the skull and scalp certainly do. Nociceptors. I've learned more about the brain during these past 3 months than most first-year medical students. Victim 3, same MO. This time it was the pre-central gyrus that was crudely gouged out, causing an abrupt loss of fine motor skills. Victim 4, the hippocampus, considerably deeper than the other structures. Main function is memory. The final victim was in his mid-50s, a truck driver from Dayton, Ohio. The man's Broca area, which controls speech, had been dug out like a scoop of soft ice cream. Nobody knows what the Spoonman does with these sections of fatty brain tissue. The media has offered ample sensationalized theories, as they're apt to do, suggesting everything from eating the brain, a Marty Jason June progeny perhaps, which is likely why I was called in, to trying to learn how the brain works. A dyslexic doctor who can't read textbooks, I guess. Among the more radical theories include the unknown subject trying to create a new brain by piecing these individual parts together. Humpty Dumpty sat on a chair. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Humpty Dumpty broke his skull and the Spoonman couldn't put him back together again. Doesn't quite work, but hell, I didn't make it up. My theory is more simplistic. The Spoonman is just a sick fuck who gets hard watching others die. The FBI has spent hundreds of hours trying to find a link between the victims, a pattern in how the unsub selects them. They seek order in the chaos. I knew this wouldn't work. My parents believe strongly in patterns too. They often spoke about fractals, about symmetry, about other shit that has no bearing on real life. It's not that I don't believe them. I too think that there is some order to this universe. But identifying said order is like trying to figure out how every grain of sand on a mile-long beach interacts with each other on the molecular level. It's there. There is a pattern, but it's impossible to identify. Even if you could figure it out, what would it mean? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Besides, I care little of the Spoonman's motivations. I just want to stop him before he maims and kills again. The first two victims were discovered in New York City, Brooklyn, then on the eastern edge of Manhattan. Victim 3 in Newark, 4 all the way in Pittsburgh, 5 Dayton, Ohio. The Spoonman is heading west. No discernible route other than just that, west. That leaves the majority of the United States as a potential hunting ground, a large area, an impossibly large area. Even the best FBI code crackers can't figure out where the Spoonman is headed. Oh, sure, they say they have. Something about longitude and latitude, which I know less about now than I did about brain function before the Spoonman's reign of terror began. But they're full of shit. Another thing my hippie parents taught me was to trust my gut, my instincts. I don't put much stock in what they said, didn't then, don't now, but this particular nugget rings true. When we were hunting the baker, the FBI developed a profile. They said that the baker was most likely a societal outcast, a drifter, someone with no job, no friends or family, someone who was uncomfortable in the presence of others. This didn't seem right to me. So while the FBI was doing their thing, shaking down homeless addicts, I focused on people with a good standing in the community where the victims lived. Contrarian that I am, I went looking for someone who had the most friends, who ran a successful business, who liked being around other people. Made sense to me, even if they'd just brushed this idea off. If I deliberately forgot the names of the victims to avoid nightmares, the killer will be haunted by them. Spending time alone would give the baker more time to think about what he's done. Surrounding yourself with others is the perfect distraction. And that was right. I found him, and I killed him. For the Spoonman, the FBI likes Louisville, Kentucky as the next place he'll strike. I don't. I just have a feeling about Indianapolis. In fairness, it's not purely instinct. I read something that tipped me off. The public might not be aware, but the FBI continually scans all the comments that keyboard warriors leave at the bottom of online news articles. And there is no shortage of coverage of the Spoonman. There are hundreds of news stories focusing on him. Every paper from the New York Times to the Maple Hollow Tribune has something to say. And there are tens of thousands of comments. Most are benign, offering common platitudes like thoughts and prayers for the victims. Others are critical of the agencies involved in the search, touting them as incompetent. Rarer, but not what I'd consider uncommon, are the complimentary notes. Not about me, or about the FBI, or the NYPD, but about him, the Spoonman. Women, ultimate clout chasers, who want to sleep with this deranged individual. Incels who feel a kinship with him say he's doing God's work by ridding the world of scum. Doesn't make sense. 4 of the 5 victims were young men with no criminal records, but none of this makes sense. One comment at the end of a page-long article in the Indianapolis Star caught my eye. First, the Spoonman steals your balance, then your warmth, then your control, your memories, and your voice, until all that remains is fear. Cryptic, unsettling, but not all that unique if you take the mass of these types of comments into consideration. Yet, the moment I read it, something deep in the pit of my stomach clenched. I took it to my boss, who forwarded it on to the FBI. A day later, an answer came back. We still like Louisville. That was it. Fucking assholes. My boss told me to go with them to Louisville, and I agreed. I also lied. I broke away from the pack and went to Indianapolis instead. It's not like they need me. They have a team, a special task force. I won't be missed. For 3 days, I combed the streets of Indianapolis, wandering with no real purpose, no objective. Day and night, looking for clues that I doubt I'd recognize even if they slapped me across the face. I haven't slept, not once. In the late afternoon of the 3rd day, I stumble across an antique store. That pain in my gut that never quite went away since reading that comment intensifies. Or maybe it's the prominent set of spoons on display in the window that convinces me to go inside. The store stinks of mildew. I'm inclined to think that the fat man behind the counter is contributing to the stench. Saw your spoons in the window. Anybody come in and ask about them recently? I'm not good with subtlety. The man raises an eyebrow. Spoons? In the window, I repeat. I look around. There are spoons everywhere. Or maybe I'm experiencing the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, a bias towards what I want to see. Or perhaps all of these shitty antique stores are just filled with old spoons. I'm no expert. We have plenty of spoons to choose from. You know, spoons have been around for centuries. They have a rich history. They've been used in medicine to carve out disease. They've even been found in ancient graves. In the Middle Ages, spoons were like Rolexes are today. Status symbols. I sigh, rub my eyes. I'm not interested in the history lesson. But has anybody been in recently to purchase some? The man eyes me, scratches the skin tags poking out from the neck of his shirt. Buy them? No, not recently. I feel a sudden headache coming on. Pain shoots through my temples. And then I hear a sound, a buzzing, like my brain has suddenly been replaced by a hive of bees. You hear that? The man just blinks. I rub my temples and everything goes black for a second. The pain eases and my vision returns. Right, thanks. I leave the shitty antique store, but I don't go far. Something that the man said triggers me, not the part about spoons being used in medicine to carve out disease, as apropos as this might be. Actually, it's not what he said, as much as how he said it. Buy them? No, not recently. The emphasis was on the word buy. Could it be him? Could the fat man be the spoon man? It could be. What's my gut telling me? No mystery there. It's telling me to sleep. There's an alley about a half a block away from the antique store, and I hustle down the dark corridor. It starts to rain, and I pull my light jacket over my head. And then I wait. Time ticks by. The rain intensifies. I'm so tired now that my legs are cramping. I lean up against the wall, but somehow misjudge the distance. My shoulder bangs painfully against the slick brick, and I clench my jaw. Rain continues to fall, and mesmerized, I hold my palm out. Drops patter on my hand. It's not cold, not warm. It just is. I turn my hand over. Fatigue makes even this most basic movement labored. My hand mysteriously stops halfway in a karate chop position. I stare at it, try to force it to keep on turning. It doesn't listen, it just trembles. On the next blink, I keep my eyes closed. When I open them again, I'm not sure where I am. Back in New York? Is this where I found victim 4? Matthew June? No, that doesn't seem right. Louisville then, with the NYPD, looking for the baker. The dark tunnel becomes almost black. Someone is standing in front of me. He's big and there's some sort of rash on his neck. You're the I grind my molars. Spoonman. Oh, fuck, it's him. The FBI agent shakes his head, looks skyward. It's him. It's the detective. What's he doing here? The agent's partner asks. What the hell is he doing in the back room of a fucking antique store of all things? The first FBI agent wipes rain from his forehead with the back of his sleeve. It doesn't help. The jacket itself is soaked. I don't know. He should have been in Kentucky with us. He kicks a circular saw lying on the ground, the now dull blade covered in gore. How long has he been here? The FBI agent in the wet jacket shrugs. The guy across the street says he thinks he saw the detective enter about 2 hours ago. Never saw him come out again. There's some blood there near the counter, so I'm guessing that he was attacked over there. Knocked out, maybe. The door opens behind them, and a man in an NYPD uniform steps in. He's old, white-haired. His mouth is turned downward in a deep frown. He walks right up to the FBI agents, stares at the naked man strapped to the chair, skull opened, parts of his brain removed. More sections than the others. Many more. All of the other victims had just one portion of their brain hollowed out. It looked like the Spoonman took this kill personally. The detective was missing the parietal lobe, the post and precentral gyri, the hippocampus, and the Broca's area. Balance, temperature, motor control, memory, and speech. It's him, right? One of your detectives? The agent asks. The man in the uniform nods, swallows hard. What's he doing here? He had a feeling. Thought the Spoonman might strike in Indianapolis. None of the 3 men say anything for several moments. Eventually, the first FBI agent says, "Well, he was right." "Lucky him," the cop replies. He turns, looking to leave. Then he spots something on the floor. During the struggle, either the detective or the Spoonman knocked over a shelf of books. One particular book stands out to him, mainly because there appears to be a smear of blood on the cover. He picks it up. The Mind's Eye by Oliver Sacks. The title means nothing to him, but there's a piece of paper jutting out from between the pages. He teases it out and unfolds it. Scrawled in pen is a simple yet familiar sentence. First, the Spoonman steals your balance, then your warmth, then your control, your memories and your voice, until all that remains is fear. "What's that?" one of the FBI agents asks. "Nothing." The cop crumples the paper up and jams it into his pocket. He stares straight ahead, his breath catching for a moment, then mutters under his breath, "Funny thing, our brains. The moment you think you know what's real, it all starts to slip away from you."
Nightmare Residue. Written, directed, and narrated by Patrick Logan. If you've enjoyed this podcast and would like to support the show, please consider heading over to Amazon and picking up your ebook version of Nightmare Residue now.